I've often thought about how my life has changed, from carefree youth to the responsibilities that come with age. When I was younger, I didn't think much about the future. I focused on enjoying life, hanging out with friends, and living in the moment. It wasn't until I met Wilma during my last year of college that I started to see a clearer path. She stood out, thoughtful, quiet, but with a strong inner drive that captivated me. Looking back, I realize how lucky I was to find her. Our relationship grew naturally, and soon we were inseparable. I wasn't one to rush things, but everything just felt right with her. We shared similar goals, supported each other, and built a life I was proud of. Little did I know our marriage would be tested in ways I couldn't have imagined. My name is Fred, and this is the story of a marriage that once seemed solid but began to fall apart. Wilma and I had been married for almost 25 years. On the surface, everything looked great. We had a wonderful daughter, Nancy, who was finishing college and had a job lined up in Washington, D.C. We lived in Richmond, only a couple of hours away, and were excited about the new chapter in her life. We had always seemed happy. We met in college, quickly fell in love, and I thought we shared a deep connection. Before Wilma, I had 2 girlfriends, one in high school and one in college. People always said Wilma was kind and sweet, which was true, though she had an Irish temper when she felt strongly about something. I'd been on the receiving end of that a few times and usually backed down when she was set in her ways. Over the years, we developed our routines. I worked in retail, and she had a long career in the city's codes department. She stayed home with our daughter for her first 5 years before going back to work. Despite some challenges, she enjoyed her job. My career was progressing, and we moved back to our hometown, which we loved. I had other job offers, but Wilma didn't want to leave since her mother was still in the area and getting older. Both my parents had passed away, which was tough, but Wilma, my daughter, and her mother were there for me. She loved my parents too, and it was a loss for her as well. When you've been married a long time, it's easy to start taking each other for granted. That's likely what happened with Wilma and me. With our daughter away at college and preparing to move out for good, I thought it was the perfect time to rekindle our relationship. I started taking Wilma on weekly dinner dates, hoping to bring some excitement back into our love life, which had grown a bit stale. But something felt off. After hearing so many stories about cheating wives and noticing small changes in Wilma, I started to worry. I never thought she'd jeopardize our marriage. She'd always done the right thing, and I trusted her completely. I paid the bills. She handled the household. We worked well together, and we always discussed major purchases. Working in retail, the Christmas season meant long hours for me, often 60-hour weeks as an assistant manager. Wilma, on the other hand, usually had time off during the holidays. Her department at the city always threw a Christmas party, and I made sure to attend, even with my hectic schedule, to meet her colleagues. But starting in the fall, Wilma had become more distant, not dramatically, just a little less engaged. I brushed it off, but she also started losing interest in romance. Our dates became less enjoyable for her, and our love life slowed from once or twice a week to once or twice a month. She blamed menopause and work stress, but something didn't feel right. I had occasional work trips to the corporate office, and in October I was scheduled to be gone for a week. Normally, Wilma hated it when I traveled, but this time she just said, okay. That got my attention. She didn't seem to care much about spending time together, and I asked repeatedly if she was all right. She insisted she was just tired from work. I suggested she see a doctor, and she agreed as I packed for my trip. Before I left, she told me to have fun and behave. I laughed it off since these trips were more work than fun, but it was strange. She'd never questioned my behavior before. As I thought more about Wilma's actions and words, it became clear something wasn't right. I asked if everything was okay, and she said yes. When I told her I'd miss her, she brushed it off, saying it was only 5 days. Normally, she hated sleeping alone, and suddenly I worried, maybe she won't be sleeping alone. I watched her closely over the weekend before my Sunday afternoon flight, which would bring me back Friday evening. I called her friend Beth, but she only mentioned that Wilma seemed tired. I also spoke to her coworker Sally, who revealed a new manager, Barney Rubble, had joined their department recently. Sally said the new rules were keeping everyone busier, but Wilma hadn't mentioned this to me. When I asked more about Barney, Sally hesitated, but eventually told me he was a big, intimidating man. About 35, 6'3", and over 200 pounds. He played football in college and, according to Sally, seemed to like Wilma. They went out for lunch at least once a week, but Sally hadn't noticed anything beyond that. I thanked her, but asked her to keep me informed if anything seemed off with Wilma. She agreed, though it didn't make me feel much better. Now I was in full worry mode. Should I confront Wilma or gather more information? I started looking into Barney. I found that he had come from Charlotte, wasn't married, and had 2 sons. He lived about 5 miles from us in a similar neighborhood. I wondered if anyone I knew lived nearby who could keep an eye on him while I was gone. As Saturday approached, I tried to learn more about this handsome and intimidating Barney. Sally's description only made me more anxious, worrying that my wife, who was more of a follower, might be drawn to him. Even though I never had a reason to think Wilma would be unfaithful, her recent behavior made me uneasy. I called our daughter Nancy and asked if she'd noticed anything unusual about her mom. She agreed that Wilma seemed a bit distant, but didn't think it was serious. I asked if she could casually ask her mom about work without raising suspicions. Nancy agreed and promised to call me after. Meanwhile, I kept myself busy with yard work, staying close to my phone. Wilma mentioned she was going shopping alone and would be back soon. After she left, I decided to try accessing her computer, but she had changed her settings and deleted all her old and sent emails, which only increased my concern. I wished I could check her phone, but she kept it with her constantly. While packing for my trip, I considered driving by Barney Rubble's house just in case. Wilma had dressed as if she was really going shopping, but I wanted to be sure. It took me about 15 minutes to get there. I noted a Lexus with North Carolina plates in his driveway, likely his car since he had recently moved from Charlotte. The city seemed to pay its department managers well. Seeing no other cars, I headed back home. My neighbor, Tom Butcher, stopped me to chat about the neighborhood, mentioning it had been quiet lately. I told him I'd be out of town for the week and asked if he could keep an eye on the house and check on Wilma. He agreed, and I went inside. Once inside, I started laundry for my trip. I usually mix my clothes with Wilma's to make a full load, and while going through the hamper, I found some new Zexy bras and underwear I hadn't seen before. It felt like another sign of trouble in our marriage. Typically, Wilma would joke that I just didn't notice her clothes, but I was certain this lingerie was new. I checked the underwear, but found nothing unusual. Still, my mind was racing, especially since I'd given her similar black and red lingerie in the past, which she rarely wore. Now I wondered when she decided to wear these. A little later, Wilma came home, and I asked how her shopping went. She said she didn't find much, but mentioned a sale at the mall. Normally, she loved shopping, especially with my store discount, but she didn't seem enthusiastic. When I asked if she went anywhere else, she vaguely mentioned trying some new stores, which made me uneasy. Dinner was quiet. I could tell we were both thinking about the unspoken tension between us. Wilma had always been a great cook, but lately she was serving more pre-made meals, and that night was no exception. After dinner, I said I needed to get allergy medicine and asked if she needed anything. She gave me a short list, and I teased her about spending time together since I'd be gone for a few days. She dismissed the idea, saying she planned to turn in early because she hadn't slept well. So much for romance. I was frustrated. It felt like we were just roommates now. When I got back from the store, she complained about everything I bought, picking fights over the wrong paper towels and toilet paper. I realized she was trying to avoid closeness by starting an argument. I didn't say anything. She went upstairs to read, and after my shower, I got into my pajamas. She told me she was tired and headed to bed early, at just 8:30. I went downstairs to watch a football game and ended up sleeping on the couch, not wanting to go to bed with an angry wife who was clearly avoiding me. I woke up early Sunday, made coffee, and read the paper. When Wilma came down, she got ready for church, so I dressed quickly and we left together. At church, Wilma acted like her usual self, sweet and friendly with everyone. I was hoping for a sermon on fidelity, but no such luck. After the service, we headed home, but she barely spoke to me. Once home, she rushed inside, forgetting her keys, and I had to let her in. She made herself a sandwich without offering me anything, so I made my own and ate in front of the TV. She read the paper as if nothing was wrong. Her phone rang and she left the room to answer it. We didn't speak during lunch. Later, I folded the laundry and left her lingerie on the bed, wanting her to see it. When she saw it, she only said, "I hope you washed it on gentle. I'd hate for you to ruin my clothes." I was furious, ready to snap, but she left the room before I could say anything. I packed for my trip, and when she saw me bringing my suitcase downstairs, she complained, "Now I have to take you to the airport and give up my Sunday." Usually, she was happy to drive me, and we'd talk about missing each other. This time, I knew I'd never feel that way again. I told her, "Never mind, I'll drive myself. Have a great week." I was sure Wilma had plans and couldn't wait for me to leave. I walked out without saying goodbye or sharing our usual kiss. The flight to Chicago was uneventful, and I checked into my hotel. Since I was the only one from my store, I had the chance to meet new people and talk business. While I didn't like traveling, it was nice to connect with others. I didn't bother calling Wilma to let her know I arrived safely, as I usually would. There didn't seem to be a point anymore. She wasn't mine anymore. I called Nancy to tell her I'd be gone for a few days and that she could reach me on my cell. I didn't hear anything from Wilma. I was certain she was relieved to be apart from me. That evening, I had dinner with others from across the country, but I was exhausted and needed sleep after a few restless nights. In the middle of the night, I woke up in tears, finally releasing all the emotions I had kept bottled up. I realized my marriage was over unless Wilma somehow changed. I couldn't go on like this. I cried for my daughter, who would now have to split holidays between two parents, and for the years Wilma and I had spent together, mostly happy ones. Eventually, I went back to sleep and started the week of meetings. The next morning, there were no messages or texts from Wilma, nothing. As the week went on, I focused on work and started planning how to end the marriage. It was clear Wilma had emotionally checked out, and I wasn't going to get her back. I called my attorney, who said he could prepare divorce papers and that it would likely be a 50-50 split, given our similar incomes. Since Nancy's college expenses were covered, that wouldn't be an issue. I accepted that the end was near and started checking our accounts, which I usually handled. Wilma had never been involved in the finances and only cared about what she wanted to buy. Taking control of my life again felt like a small victory. Later in the week, I called my neighbor Tom to see if he'd noticed anything at our house. He told me Alexis had been picking up Wilma every morning and dropping her off each evening. I laughed bitterly and said, "Thanks for the info, Tom." Tom, always nosy, had been watching everything, and for once, I was thankful. I asked him for a favor. Keep an eye on the car, let me know how long it's there, and if possible, take some photos. I was honest with him about my suspicions, and he agreed to help, mentioning he'd gone through a tough divorce himself. By Thursday, I asked my boss if I could leave Chicago a day early, explaining something urgent had come up at home. He agreed, so I booked an early evening flight. I called Tom again, and he told me the car had been parked overnight, sending me photos with timestamps. I told him, "I owe you, Tom." As I flew home, anxiety built up about what I'd find. I knew the marriage was over, but Wilma's behavior still shocked me. How could she change so quickly? After landing, I checked my phone. Still nothing from Wilma, but Nancy had called, so I returned her call. She said, "Dad, I tried calling Mom, but she didn't answer. I left her a message to call me back." Driving home, I saw no cars in front of the house, but thought Wilma's might be in the garage. I stopped by Tom's house first. Tom greeted me and said, "The car was parked in front of your house all night, no discretion at all." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. He added that they had left around 6 a.m. and hadn't returned. I wondered if they went to Rubble's place or just out for dinner. Tom suggested I park my car on a nearby street to avoid being noticed. I agreed. Then Tom said something that made my blood boil. They looked like a happy couple, holding hands as they got into the car. I felt sick, but replied, "Thanks, Tom." He apologized for telling me, but I reassured him, my marriage is over anyway. I had to decide whether to wait for them to come back or confront Wilma right away. I called my attorney, explaining the situation. He advised waiting for a private investigator in case things got heated, but I couldn't wait. "I need to see it with my own eyes," I said. He cautioned me, but I was determined. I have to know for sure. I turned to Tom and said, "I'm going in soon. I want to catch them in the act, not just talking." Tom offered to come along, but I declined. He left the room briefly and returned with a pistol. "Just for defense, in case anything happens," he said. "I'll stay outside with my camera and phone, just in case." I appreciated Tom's help, but the reality of what I was about to do hit me hard. I walked to my house, checking the time. It was around 9 p.m. Peeking through the window, I saw Rubble kissing Wilma passionately. My heart broke, but I stayed quiet. With the curtains partially open, anyone could have seen them. Tom took a few photos. Rubble, much taller than Wilma, started undressing. He stripped down to his boxers, revealing a muscular body. Wilma stood up, grinning as he removed her blouse and pants. She wore the red lingerie I had found earlier. At that moment, any remaining hope I had was gone. Rubble picked Wilma up and carried her upstairs. I followed, quietly unlocking the back door. I heard her giggle as Rubble said, "I'm going to use you like my little Zex toy." I turned on my phone's video recorder and moved to the bedroom door, which was partially open. Rubble was unclothed, with his back to me, as Wilma lay on our bed. My emotions were a mix of anger, hurt, and numbness. As I stood in the doorway, Wilma suddenly turned and saw me. Her face changed from desire to shock in an instant. Rubble saw me and laughed. "The chicken is here. Now you can see how a real man handles your wife." I was shaking with rage, but kept my voice steady. "Screw you, and her too. No one disrespects me in my own house." Rubble smirked. "What are you going to do about it, cuck?" I asked calmly. "How big are you?" He puffed up. "I'm 6'3", 225 pounds, and I've got something you'll never have, a giant Johnny." I nodded, staying composed. "Do you run too? Stay in shape?" He looked confused, but answered, "Yeah, I run. Why?" "Good," I said, pulling out the weapon. "You'll need to outrun a bullet." Wilma screamed, and Rubble's confidence disappeared. "Hey man, don't do anything crazy," he begged. "Get on the floor, now!" Rubble dropped to his knees while Wilma whimpered. I continued. "Who decided to screw in my house, you or Wilma?" He stammered. "We knew you were out of town. Wilma wanted to be here in case you called." I shook my head. "Brilliant. How many times have you slept with my wife?" 5 times, he admitted. "When was the first?" "Monday night," he said, panicking. "Please, Wilma, tell him." Wilma, frozen in shock, nodded slightly. "Put your head on the floor," I ordered, "and don't move." I laughed bitterly. "Your Johnny doesn't seem so big now. Not so arrogant, are you?" I pointed the weapon at his lap. "How about I pull the trigger? You won't die, but you won't be having fun either." "Please, no. I won't touch her again," Rubble begged, starting to pee himself. "Pissed yourself, huh?" I mocked. I told him to get dressed, still laughing at the absurdity. "You're a joke, Rubble, but don't worry, I've got it all on video. If either of you causes trouble, I'll release it." Wilma, terrified, nodded. Rubble, trembling, agreed, saying, "Please don't release it." Once he was dressed, I told him to leave. I mentioned Barney Rubble before he left, saying, "Don't go messing around with any more married women, okay?" He nodded and walked out, leaving me alone with my unclothed, crying wife. I told her to get dressed and that we'd talk after I made some coffee. Downstairs, Tom told me he was proud of me and had heard the whole conversation. Surprised, I thanked him. He revealed that when he gave me the weapon, it only had 1 bullet, and he was ready to step in if needed. "I didn't want you eliminating them both and making a mess," he said. I shivered, realizing the risk, and thanked him again. "Don't hurt her," Tom warned. "You'll end up in jail and your daughter needs you." "Thanks, Tom," I replied, though my mind was elsewhere. A few minutes later, Wilma, now dressed, came down. I poured her some coffee, and we sat down. She tried sitting next to me on the couch, but I moved to the recliner. "So, what do you have to say for yourself?" I asked. Wilma began. "I can't express how sorry I am for everything. You know me. I've never acted like this." "I thought I knew you," I interrupted. "Keep going," she continued, crying. "I got caught up in the excitement and thought you'd never find out." I laughed bitterly. "You were about as subtle as a freight train. Did you think I wouldn't notice? I loved you, and for 24 years my life with you and Nancy was amazing. Then you lost your mind. Now's your chance to be honest. Lie and you're out." I knew I wasn't taking her back, but I wanted her to admit her mistakes. She nodded and said, "I have no excuse." He swept me up in the moment. He was wild and intense, something I've never felt before. "You're so loving and kind," but he took what he wanted. She paused, and I stared blankly at her. "I know it's stupid. I acted like a teenager." "Quite the date," I said. 5 Zex sessions. And don't forget the groping and lunches. Your coworkers saw it all. They know you're a strumpet." She gasped. "I never thought they'd notice." "Well, they did," I said. She cried more. "I'm so sorry for everything. I've disgraced myself." "I agree," I replied. "But you also humiliated me. Your selfishness and lack of respect were unbelievable. I never imagined someone who claimed to love me would treat me this way." I began to tear up. She tried to come closer, but I stopped her. "Don't come near me," I said. "You've ignored me for weeks. You didn't even call me once while I was away. You were too caught up with your lover to remember the man who stood by you for 24 years. Shame on you, Wilma. I thought you'd love me until I died, for better or worse." Then I broke down in tears. I had held it together through everything, but now I couldn't stop. I thought about the future. Thanksgiving was next week, and my poor Nancy would have to split every holiday between us. Wilma had ruined it all. As angry as I was at Rubble, her betrayal hurt more because she showed no respect or love for me. In her eyes, I was weak for always putting her needs above mine. I had sacrificed for her, cared for her when she was sick, and put her feelings first. She had been a great wife and mother, and now it was all gone. Maybe I should have treated her worse, I thought, instead of always caring about her feelings. She tried to approach me again, but I pushed her away. She grabbed my legs, crying at my feet. I needed to have this conversation for closure. I wasn't going to listen to the usual excuses. I was lonely, or he made me feel pretty. I didn't care what he said, only what she did. My heart was breaking, but I knew I'd eventually heal. After a few moments, I told her to sit back on the sofa so we could talk. Still crying, she sat down. "Wilma," I began, "I have one question. Do you love him?" "No, I don't think so," she replied. "You don't think so?" I shot back. "Are you unsure whether you love him or not?" "No, Fred, I don't love him. It was the thrill of doing something wrong. You know me. I've always been the good girl, doing what was expected. Then Barney came along and I was drawn in by his power." I shook my head. "You let it happen. Did you know it was wrong?" "What were you thinking?" I continued. "Rubble is just like those guys who take advantage of women. Except you willingly went along and treated me like I was nothing." She broke down, sobbing. No. "You enjoyed it," I accused. "Sorry I'm not as big or rough as he is. If you wanted to be treated that way, you could have told me." She cried harder. "I've never been adventurous, and I wanted to try new things. Remember when I suggested spicing things up after Nancy left? I bought toys, oils, outfits, but you refused them all. Were you waiting for the right person?" We sat in silence for a few minutes. "I'm going to take a shower," I told her, "and then we'll talk more." As I showered, I thought about everything. I knew Wilma was sorry, but it was too soon to make any decisions about our marriage. I wished I could stay in the shower forever to wash away my thoughts. When I came back downstairs, Wilma looked completely drained. While her pain was fresh, mine had been building for weeks. Finally, she spoke. "Fred, I love you and always will. I know my actions don't show it, but I'm devastated by what I did." I cut her off. "Stop it, Wilma. I know you're sorry, but if I were still in Chicago, what would you be doing right now?" She was silent. "Tell me," I demanded. She hung her head and whispered, "I'd be with Barney." "With him how? I thought we made love." "I hate the word screw," she said. "I'd be screwing Barney." "That's better," I said coldly. "At least you admit it. Now tell me everything you did." "I already know some of it, so don't lie." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We fooled around. I gave him head, and we had sex." "Nice. You wouldn't do that for me because you said it was disgusting, but you did it for him. Did you enjoy it?" She shook her head. "No, I did it because he demanded it. I don't know why I let him treat me like that. He used me." "But you liked it," I said. "I saw the lust in your eyes. I've never seen that look for me, not in 24 years. How do you think that makes me feel?" She cried harder. "I love you, and you're so loving. He was just a brute. I'm ashamed." "Do you even remember when we last had sex?" I asked. She looked confused. "A couple of weeks ago?" "No, it's been 4 weeks, around the time you started seeing Barney. Did you even notice? And when did we last make love? Was he on your mind?" She shook her head. "No, it wasn't the same with him. He just took me. We make love." "But you liked it. Just a couple of hours ago, he's all you could think about. Do you know how humiliating that is for me?" She sobbed. "I'll do anything to ease your pain. I never thought I could hurt you so badly." "Do you want to keep seeing him?" I asked coldly. "He made you feel things I never could, even if you let me try." "I don't want him, Fred. I want you," she pleaded. "I find that hard to believe," I said. "You can't change that fast. We both need sleep. I'm off tomorrow, and maybe things will be clearer after we rest." I got up and headed to our bedroom. I grabbed a few things and took them to our daughter's room. Wilma followed me, looking devastated. "I want to sleep with you," she whispered. "Our bedroom is ruined because of you and Rubble," I replied coldly. "I doubt I'll ever sleep there again. You should stay in it. You have things to do tomorrow." She looked puzzled. "What things?" "Go to the doctor and get checked," I said firmly. "Rubble probably slept with lots of women. You need to get tested for your own safety. If you slept with him before we last had sex, you need to tell me because I might need to be tested too. Also, did he talk you into using our bed? He was trying to degrade me and make me betrayed. That makes me furious. You enjoyed seeing me humiliated. Have a nice night." I slammed the door and went to bed. Wilma left and went back to our room. I tossed and turned for hours before finally falling asleep. When I got up at 7 o'clock the next morning, Wilma was already in the kitchen. She had made coffee and told me she had taken the day off. "We have the whole day together," she said nervously, "and I want us to talk." The thought of listening to her all day made me uneasy, but I sat down for breakfast. We ate in silence until she said, "I'll get tested for STDs. I want to work through this with you." "Why?" I asked sarcastically. "If you still want your lover and can keep it quiet, just keep seeing him." She looked shocked. "You want me to keep seeing him? Isn't that what you want?" I shot back. "He charmed you and you loved it. You'll see him at work every day anyway. Nothing has to change. Might as well keep enjoying Big Tool if that's what you like." She stared at me, tears in her eyes, confused. "Why are you saying this? I want to be with you." "I think we should try a separation," I said calmly. "That way you can be with Big Johnny and I can be the oblivious cuck. You get the best of both worlds, respect from friends and family and no wasted time in a fake marriage. We can act like a happy couple at events, and then your lover can have you after." She began to cry as I got up to leave. "Why does this stupid strumpet suddenly care about what I'm doing?" I thought as I walked out. She hadn't cared for a while. While she cleaned up, I checked her phone. No calls from Barney since last night, but she could have used the landline. I left and went to talk to my boss. After explaining everything, he was shocked and sympathetic. We discussed transferring me to another store, which would mean a raise and getting out of this nightmare. He said it could happen within a month or two. Next, I went to my attorney and told him my plans. We'd move forward with a standard separation and a 50-50th split. I intended to move out within the week and wait for the transfer. I also changed all our accounts, canceled joint cards, and took out half the savings. We'd need Wilma's signature for the investments, so that would have to wait. It was straightforward, but still made me feel awful. Later, I walked through the park, trying to clear my head. Wilma called to tell me she had her doctor's appointment and would get the results in a few days. I said I'd be home soon, but needed to talk to Nancy before making any final decisions. That thought made me cry. After getting some air, I went home. The house didn't feel like a home anymore, just a place to stay. Wilma was dressed nicely and seemed nervous. "We need to move forward," she said. "Maybe we can fix our marriage." "Okay, dear wife," I said sarcastically. "Tell me how we do that." She suggested counseling, seeing less of Barney, and making more time for us. It sounded nice. When she finished, I asked, "Are you willing to show me all your communications with him? I want to see everything before we move on." She looked uneasy. "I deleted them." "How convenient," I said. "Why did you do that?" "I didn't want you to see them," she admitted. "When did you delete them?" I pressed. "I wanted a fresh start. Everything that reminded me of Barney had to go," she said, thinking it was a smart move. I handed her a document. "Here's the separation agreement from my attorney. If you want, have someone review it. I'll move out and keep helping with the expenses." She thought for a moment before responding. "I'd rather stay together and try to fix this. I love you, and I think we can work through it." "I don't," I replied, knowing I wasn't going to tell her about the transfer. She'd never move. We spent the rest of the day quietly working around the house. Wilma was busy talking to her mom about Thanksgiving and making plans to invite some friends. I didn't bother telling her I wouldn't be joining this year. We ordered pizza, ate in silence, and I kept packing to prepare for moving out. She begged me to stay until after Thanksgiving before deciding anything, and I nodded without giving her a real answer. The rest of the weekend dragged. I continued sleeping in the other room, and she again asked if she could join me. I told her no, explaining that we needed space. Monday came, and I'd taken the day off without telling Wilma. While she went to work, I moved into a temporary motel for a few days, waiting for news on my transfer. My regional boss was looking into 2 options since I was the assistant manager. The store manager, a good friend, knew this move would be financially beneficial and helped me escape the toxic situation I was in. Around lunchtime, I called Wilma's office and spoke to Sally. She was hesitant to talk, but I needed to know how Wilma was behaving at work. Sally said Wilma had been very quiet and kept to herself. She also mentioned that Wilma spent about an hour in Barney's office earlier and came out looking upset. When Sally checked in later, it seemed like Wilma had been crying. Sally asked her what was wrong, and Wilma admitted she'd had a rough weekend and that things with me were difficult. When Sally asked, "Does this have anything to do with Barney?" Wilma just nodded, but didn't elaborate. I thanked Sally and decided to call Wilma. After waiting a bit, I called to see if I could pick up on anything suspicious. When she answered, I asked, "Are you at lunch?" "Yes," she replied, with the noise of people talking in the background, likely a restaurant. "Are you alone?" I pressed. "Yes," she said, just grabbing lunch and heading back. I wanted to believe her, but I called Sally again. Sally told me Wilma had only been gone about 25 minutes, so maybe she was telling the truth. But Sally also mentioned Wilma had gone into Barney's office for another 30 minutes after lunch. I thanked her again, moved more clothes to the motel, and spent the rest of the day trying not to think about Wilma. By the time Wilma got home around 5 o'clock, I had made up my mind to tell her I had moved out. When she arrived, I sat her down and said, "We need to talk. I've moved out, and I think we should live separately for a while to figure out what's next." She looked shocked. "Fred, I don't want that. I think we should stay together and work this out." "How? How can we work this out? Maybe we need time apart to see if we even still want this marriage." "No," she replied, even more shocked. "I don't want a divorce. Not at all." "Wilma, since I confronted Barney, have you spoken to him?" She hesitated before answering. "Yes, but we were just talking about how to work together, that's all." "Please, Fred, don't do this. Let's just get through Thanksgiving first. It could help us both." "I'm sorry," I said, softening a bit. "But I love Nancy, and I think you still want Barney. It's too painful to be second best to my wife. We need to talk to Nancy and tell her we've separated." Tears filled her eyes. "Please, Fred, don't tell her. Not yet." "She needs to know," I insisted. "We can't hide this from her." I stood up. "I should go. I'll be in touch." I hugged her briefly, and she cried as I left. Back at the motel, I settled in and worked on a few things. I told Wilma she could call if anything important came up, but otherwise we needed space. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning with everything weighing on me. The next day, I went to work, throwing myself into the holiday rush. With Black Friday around the corner, it was busy, which helped distract me from my personal turmoil. When I got back to the motel around 7 o'clock, I checked my phone. There was a text from Wilma saying she loved me. I scoffed, thinking sarcastically, "Wilma who?" Later, she called. I answered. "Thanksgiving dinner is at noon," she said, sounding hopeful. "Nancy is coming home tomorrow, and we've invited about 10 people. What time will you be there?" I took a deep breath. "I won't be coming, Wilma." There was silence on the other end, and then she hung up. After that, I called Nancy and told her the truth. Her mom and I had separated. She started crying, and I explained that her mom had been seeing someone else. I didn't go into all the details, but I had to be honest. "I didn't cause this," I told her. "Your mom did." She begged me to come to Thanksgiving, saying her mom would be heartbroken if I didn't. I told her I couldn't. I was too hurt, but I promised to take her out and spend time with her over the weekend. She was upset, but she understood. I explained that work would be intense with Black Friday, and I'd have to be at the store by 5 a.m. working until nearly 8 p.m. "I just wish you'd try to fix things with Mom," she said, sounding desperate. "I wish I could too," I replied, but I just didn't have it in me. After that call, I barely slept. The upcoming holiday season was shaping up to be the worst I'd ever had. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving was always hectic at the store. I worked a 12-hour shift and returned to my motel completely drained. I had missed calls from both Nancy and Wilma. I called Nancy first. She told me she had spoken with her mom, and Wilma had admitted to some inappropriate behavior, but insisted she never stopped loving me. Nancy was upset with me for not coming to Thanksgiving, but I couldn't bring myself to go back to that house. Later, I called Wilma. She was furious, demanding to know why I wasn't attending Thanksgiving. "You're ruining everything. Nancy will be so disappointed, and it's all your fault," she said. I sighed. "I just don't feel comfortable in a home where my wife entertained another man." "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "You're her father. Of course. You're welcome." "Is Barney coming?" I asked coldly. She hung up on me. Feeling exhausted, I called Wilma's friend Beth. I didn't want to ruin her holiday, but I needed to set the record straight. Beth had been invited to our Thanksgiving dinner, so I told her I wouldn't be there. She was shocked and asked why, so I told her the truth. Wilma had been seeing someone else, and I had caught her. "I can't believe it," Beth said, clearly surprised. "It's true," I replied, "but I don't want to spoil your holiday. I hope you have a great day." Thanksgiving morning was sunny, but I wasn't in the mood to celebrate. Alone in my small motel room, I ate a ham and cheese sandwich, thinking about families gathering for big turkey dinners. I remembered past Thanksgivings we had shared and began to cry. My life felt like it was falling apart, but I knew I had to move forward. I had the TV on for company, but it felt like I was stuck in a prison. Nancy called around 4 o'clock, saying she was coming over to spend some time with me. When she arrived, we both cried as I hugged her tightly. She told me she had stayed up most of the night with her mom, who had admitted to making a mistake but hadn't shared all the details. "Mom's a mess," she said. "She cried for 2 hours and dreaded seeing everyone without you there. When she told them you two had separated, everyone was shocked. She didn't want to answer any questions but said she's working toward fixing things." It sounded like a somber Thanksgiving, and Wilma's mom was furious, determined to get to the bottom of things. Nancy and I had a quiet dinner together, talking about school, her friends, and future plans. She had a boyfriend I hadn't met yet, and she thought he might be the one. That made me happy, but also a little sad. She couldn't wait to graduate and start her first job. I told her about my possible transfer, but asked her not to tell her mom yet. She realized that if I got the transfer, I'd never get back with Wilma since Wilma would never move. After dinner, Nancy kissed me and left. Black Friday was grueling. I arrived at the store by 5:30 a.m., and we opened at 7 o'clock. It was chaos. 2 employees didn't show up, a computer crashed, and there were constant complaints about items being out of stock. It felt like I was jumping from one crisis to the next, both at work and in my personal life. When I finally finished around 8 p.m., I returned to my motel, exhausted. I had 10 messages, 1 from Wilma, 2 from Nancy, 5 from Wilma's mom, 1 from Beth, and 1 from my regional manager. I called my manager first. He had good news. The store manager in Savannah was retiring, and he thought I'd be a good fit to replace him. I told him I'd love to talk about it, but the position wouldn't open up until after the new year. I thanked him and looked forward to the opportunity. Next, I called Nancy. She was excited because her boyfriend was coming to town on Saturday, and we planned to go out to dinner. After that, I called Wilma. She said Thanksgiving went okay, but people kept asking about me. "It was your choice not to be there," she said angrily. "And I'm furious that you told Nancy I had taken a lover. That's not true. You're my lover, and I made one mistake." "Don't downplay what you did, Wilma. I didn't cause this mess," I said before ending the call. Lastly, I called my mother-in-law. She had always been kind to me, and I was nervous about talking to her. She wanted to know everything, and I didn't hold back. She listened carefully and then told me not to make any hasty decisions and that she loved me. As dinner with Nancy and her boyfriend approached, I tried to stay positive. When we finally met, her boyfriend Mark was respectful and polite. We had a pleasant dinner together, and then out of the blue, Mark asked me, "Would you allow me the honor of asking for Nancy's hand in marriage?" Nancy smiled, and I could feel my eyes well up. "I'd be proud," I said, trying to hold back tears. Mark was a good young man with a bright future, and seeing Nancy so happy lifted my spirits, even if just a little. They hadn't told anyone yet, but they were planning to announce it soon. Later that night, I hugged Nancy tightly. "You and Mark are the bright spots in my life," I told her. "I'm so happy for you." After that moment, I knew the holidays would still be tough, but at least I had something positive to focus on. Work continued to consume most of my time, which kept my mind off Wilma. I arrived at the store early each day and came home late, collapsing into bed. Wilma had called a few times, but for the most part, she left me alone. I didn't know much about what she was up to, and while I was curious, I wasn't about to ask. One afternoon, Wilma called to check in. "How are you?" she asked. "Busy," I responded shortly. "I miss you," she said. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I'm hoping we can work things out." I stayed silent. "There's a Christmas party for work this weekend," she went on, "and I'm not sure if I should go without you. I miss you, Fred. This will be the first Christmas party I've gone to without you." I sighed, knowing she was trying to tug at my emotions. "I don't know what to tell you, Wilma. I've got a lot of work, and I'm swamped." She shifted the conversation to Christmas shopping. "I've been getting things ready for Nancy's presents, and I'll make sure she has everything she needs. Can you help cover some of the costs?" "Of course," I said, keeping the conversation neutral. "Okay, I've got to go now. I'll talk to you later," she said before hanging up. A few minutes later, my phone rang again, this time from Wilma's mother. She sounded pleasant, but had a serious tone. "Fred, I need to speak with you in person," she said firmly. "When can I see you?" I knew this talk was inevitable. "How about tomorrow night at 9 o'clock?" I suggested. "No," she insisted. "I need to see you now." I dreaded what was coming, but agreed. "I'll be there shortly." I pulled into her driveway around 9:15. She greeted me with a hug. "I'm exhausted," I admitted. But I'm here. We sat in her living room, and she got straight to the point. Fred, you need to talk to Wilma. She's been a wreck without you. I sighed deeply. I get it, but this isn't a good time. I'm working long hours and barely have any free time. Just then, the front door opened, and Wilma walked in. I hadn't seen her since before Thanksgiving, and I felt a flood of mixed emotions. She looked a bit thinner, but still beautiful. My heart raced, but then anger quickly took over. Calm down, dear, Wilma's mother said gently. This won't take long. Wilma rushed over and hugged me tightly around my waist. Fred, she began, I know I hurt you, but I'm trying to make things right. I've been seeing a counselor, and it's helping me understand our issues. I want you to take me to the Christmas party. Please. I'm begging you. It's for my job, and they like to see couples. It could help me at work. Wilma, you know I'm working insane hours right now. It's really hard to get away, I said, keeping my tone even. Won't it be awkward if I'm there with you? I'm sure Barney would love to humiliate me again. Barney's an idiot. I don't care about him. I care about you, she pleaded. Please, Fred, there's dinner and a dance. You can leave after dinner, but just promise me one dance. Please, just one. I didn't know how I kept ending up in these situations. Fine, I muttered. I'll think about it. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek, and I stood up to leave. Wilma's mother gave me a hug as I left. Please give her another chance, she whispered. She's lost without you. I'll think about it, I replied, heading back to the motel. The party was set for the next Saturday at the Marriott. Cocktails at 6 o'clock, dinner at 7 o'clock, and dancing from 8:30 until midnight. I checked my work schedule, and it looked like I could make it at least until around 8:30. Still, I wasn't sold on the idea. A few days later, I called my attorney and asked him to have the paperwork ready if I wanted to move forward. I also asked if he knew a private investigator, and he recommended a guy named Phil. I contacted Phil and explained everything, including how I had agreed to give Wilma one last chance, mainly for Nancy's sake and her mother's. Phil agreed to follow her for the week leading up to the party. Wilma texted me throughout the week saying she loved me and couldn't wait to see me at the party in my tux. Since I hadn't committed yet, I replied, I haven't decided if I'm going. By Friday, Phil called me with updates. He had been tailing Wilma and observing her interactions. She'd gone out to lunch with Barney one day, but they acted professionally, nothing romantic. He also mentioned that Barney stopped by her house one afternoon for about 10 minutes, but nothing suspicious happened. Still, knowing Barney had been at my house made my blood boil. On Friday night, Phil sent me another update. Wilma just left work and went to Barney's house. She's been there since 5:30. A pizza was delivered around 6:15. It was now 8:30, and I felt sick to my stomach. I knew this was the final straw. Even if I had been considering giving her another chance, this erased any possibility of reconciliation. I asked Phil if he could get any pictures, and he said he'd try. I closed the store at 10 o'clock that night, and it usually took about an hour to wrap things up. I was in turmoil, knowing whatever hope remained was now gone. Around 11:15, Phil sent me some pictures. While there weren't any intimate shots, it showed them hugging and sitting close together in Barney's living room. I decided to call Wilma. It rang, and when it went to voicemail, I left a message asking her to call me back. A few minutes later, she did. Hey, are you okay? She asked, sounding concerned. I won't be able to make it to the party tomorrow night, I said flatly. She sounded disappointed. Why not? I bought a new dress and really wanted you to see it. I know you're with Barney, I said coldly. Tell him to screw off. I hope you're enjoying his Johnny. I hung up before she could respond. When I got back to the motel, Phil texted me again. Wilma left Barney's house right after your call, he reported. The next morning, I felt more at peace than I had in a while. It was cold and bright outside, and even though my life was still a mess, I had finally made a decision. I called Nancy to tell her I wasn't going to get back together with her mom. She's still seeing Barney, I explained. I can't do this anymore. Nancy was disappointed, but she understood. Mom said she hadn't seen him outside of work and wouldn't ever again, she said, sounding frustrated. I'm sorry, but it's over, I told her. Next, I called my mother-in-law and told her the same thing. She was furious and apologized for her daughter's behavior. I'm sorry I raised her like this, she said. I can't believe she's still seeing that man. I appreciate your support over the years, I told her. But this is the end for me. Later, I checked my phone and saw 5 missed calls and about 10 texts from Wilma, all saying nothing happened at Barney's house. We just had pizza and talked, she insisted. Please believe me. I finally texted back, "Barney has won. Don't contact me anymore. I'll send the divorce papers on Monday." Work carried on as usual, and I finally had a plan for the future. I called Sally at Wilma's work one last time. "This is the last time I'll bother you," I promised. "Thanks for everything." She told me about the Christmas party. "Wilma was quiet," she said. "She mostly stayed with the girls, danced with a few guys, and yes, she danced with Barney once, but she didn't look happy." "Did she mention me at all?" I asked. "She said you two were probably getting a divorce and then started crying," Sally told me. "Thanks again, Sally," I said. "Take care and have a great Christmas." That night, Nancy came over and we had a quiet dinner in my motel room. We were both feeling down, but just seeing her lifted my spirits. She told me her mom was miserable and they had been arguing over her lifestyle and how she treated me. "Mom cried most of the night," Nancy said. "I told her you're getting a transfer and leaving the area after the new year. She broke down saying she was wrong about everything. She always thought you two would get back together." "That's not happening," I told her firmly. "I'm moving on." Nancy also told me Wilma had received the divorce papers. "She put them down and hasn't touched them since they arrived," she said. "Tell her to just sign them," I said. "It's time to move on." Almost 2 years have passed since that awful time in my life. I've settled in Savannah and am happier than I've ever been. My wonderful daughter Nancy is married to Mark and they live in Northern Virginia. She loves her job and hopes to start a family in a few years. Wilma sold the house and I got my half of the proceeds. At first, she tried to fight the divorce, but it was pointless. She never dated Barney after our split. He moved on to his next conquest, a married woman, which eventually cost him his job after sexual maltreatment claims. Even Wilma testified against him. Nancy keeps me updated on her mom. Wilma dates occasionally, but is unhappy. She mostly stays in her condo, telling Nancy she made a huge mistake and will never forgive herself. She still says she loves me, but knows I'll never take her back. She sent me a long apology letter, as her counselor advised, but I never responded. Wilma hasn't called in a long time. The last time she asked, "Is there anything I can do to get you back or for you to forgive me?" I told her, "I don't think so." Now, I've started dating again. I've met some wonderful women and am taking it slow. For the first time in a long while, I feel content.